Why am I mean?
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in for another week of our Winter Nature Challenge 2021. We've got a really exciting topic tonight, and I can tell already by the participation that this is going to be a popular one. So we have over just like 397 people registered for the Winter Nature Challenge as of right now. So it's great to see that people getting out, staying engaged with what we're offering and tuning in for another great evening. So we're really excited for this week's challenge. Once again, my name is Brian Taylor with the North-South Rivers Watershed Association, and we're just thrilled once again to be partnering up with Mass Audubon and the South Shore Natural Science Center to offer this great virtual program. And we can already tell that the participation has certainly increased now that we are on a virtual platform, allowing more people to tune in from home. So it's really great to see. So I'll go ahead and send it on over to Chris Jacobs, the director of the South Shore Natural Science Center.
Thanks, Brian. We're excited for tonight. I think we have a great program. And I just want to just remind everyone that we have some amazing sponsors, Clean Harbors for several years now. And then also the Mass Cultural Council has been a great sponsor of this program. So thank you to Mass Cultural Council and Clean Harbors. Just what's going on at the Science Center. Nature Adventures Camp registration opened on Monday for returning families, and it opens on this coming Monday for new campers. So we are really excited to offer another great summer of programming. So the winter week 5 challenge, Reading the Landscape. We have a couple of great photos here that was submitted by Nancy Larson. These are a couple of Weymouth glacial erratics, and it's just stunning pictures. And I found out that Weymouth was originally known as Wessagusset Colony. In addition, Jill Johnston submitted some information. She thought some maybe a vernal pool, possible vernal pool at Tubbs Meadow, and then glacial evidence at Tubbs Meadow as well. And she sent in that Matakeesit in Pembroke means place of much fish. So that's really great. So I'm gonna send it back over to Brian.
Great, thanks, Chris. I was excited to hear about the Matakeesit because, of course, working with the North-South River Watershed, the preserving the herring runs and reestablishing and restoring the natural fish runs in many of our local towns is hugely important. So it's really cool to see that name come up because of the Place of Many Fish, of course, is talking about those historic herring runs that we're working so hard to restore for for many, many reasons. So once again, your support is hugely appreciated. We have raised over $500 so far, so it's great to see people supporting programs like this. And so any donations that you will make was incredibly appreciated, but also will be split evenly amongst the North-South River Watershed Association, Mass Audubon, and the South Shore Natural Science Center. So please support if you would like to see programs like this and other programs continued in the future. So thank you very much for your support, for allowing us to provide free programming like this. Also throughout the program, I will put in the chat if you would like to. I will put the link for this donation page in the chat, as well as information to text to give if you would like to simply just text. So the number is right there, but I will also include that in the chat as well. So if you are feeling generous throughout the program and would like to support this program and future programs like this, please feel free to support. Your support is absolutely appreciated. So thank you very much for that. Without further ado, we have a fantastic program tonight. If you happen to have joined us the week prior to last week talking about birds and introduction to birding, this will be a sort of that was sort of a segue into this, where we really delve further into a particular type of bird realm. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce someone incredibly knowledgeable on the subject, Doug Lowry, a adult learning specialist with Mass Audubon Southeast Region. So I'd like to happily introduce Doug.
Thanks, Brian and Chris. I'm going to take a minute to do this share screen. Let's see. See if I've got this right. Go up, and thanks for your patience, folks. How are we doing?
Yep, looks good to me, Doug.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Yeah, we're gonna delve into the world of owls, and you are surrounded by owls. You probably already know that, but you might not appreciate just how many owls we have living amongst us. And so we're going to talk about owls in general, but also hit upon the 8 different species of owls that we find in Massachusetts. And for the most part, all of these 8 we could find in our neighborhood, in down here in the watershed and in the southeast Massachusetts for sure. Let's see. Again, I just want to start. So this week in particular, these vacation weeks really drive home the importance of the 3 organizations that you are familiar with. You heard, well, earlier Brian was talking about running a vacation week program this week. Chris was doing the same. In fact, they're so busy that she was out with the groups this week. And at Mass Audubon at North River, we have a program running as well. And as you know, it's just so important to keep the education end of our mission statement, all 3 organizations chugging along. Our youth really are our future. And in a lot of ways, they certainly have a better understanding of the importance of embracing nature and caretaking and stewarding our community. So good on you for if you're a member of any one of these organizations. One of the challenges I'll always throw out is, if you can, and only if you can, if you could support all 3, you won't be sorry. Thanks. So tonight we'll talk about the owl family, kind of where they fall in the kingdom of animals. We'll talk about the 8 owls found in Massachusetts. We'll recognize some of their calls, and we'll look at their adaptations. A lot of these things that you are familiar with, and we're going to give a little pop-up quiz here in a minute, just to see to prove just how much you already know. And then we'll spend some time talking about, in our neighborhoods, where and when to observe owls. and how to do it in a way that's respectful to both the owls and the night itself. So we'll start with a really fun story. A lot of you folks might be familiar with Norm Smith, who's known for his removing snowy owls from Logan Airport and tagging them, weighing them, and letting them go up either on the North Shore around Plum Island or down here at Duxbury Beach in the winter, just to keep them off the airstrips at Logan Airport. Well, many years ago, his daughter, who was in high school at the time, Danielle Smith, wanted to do a high school project. And she asked her dad if he thought saw-whet owls would be traveling through in any great numbers in this area. And Norm actually wasn't aware of a lot of research saying so. So they set up some mist nets at Daniel Webster and quickly found out that at certain times of the winter, dozens of saw-whet owls were coming through. And so Danielle went on and wrote a paper and won all sorts of awards for it. And so my point here is that owls are really cherished by all ages. And Chris, Brian, and I were just joking that they're kind of the gateway bird for folks. An awful lot of people get interested in birds in general after being specifically interested in owls. And that's been true down the ages. You know, in some cultures, owls are a symbol of wisdom. Some cultures, owls are symbols of death and foreboding. And a lot of that is probably associated with the fact that they're out at night and they are much better at dealing with night than we are. So pretty much all cultures across the world, you'll see some sort of connection to owls. In fact, owls are found on all the continents except for Antarctica. Now, if you're familiar with the chat function, here's a quiz for you. These are kind of famous owls, mostly in kids' stories, but not completely. And if you want to go ahead in the chat and identify the names of the owls corresponding to the numbers that they are associated with. And if you do that, then we'll have Chris or Brian give us a holler as to what your answers are. We'll give you just a minute or two for that. And if you're not familiar with the chat function, it is, I believe, on the bottom of most people's screens. And it'll say chat. And if you click on that, there'll be a window opening on your right, and you can type in answers. Anything happen in there? Chris or Brian?
We have, she did Peter Rabbit as number 3.
Ah.
Snowy Owl, number 8.
Oh, very good. I'm going to put up the answers here. And some of these I was familiar with, and some of them I weren't. This Plop the Owl that was afraid of the dark is new to me, but it's a lovely kids book that you know, it basically talks about an owl that is afraid of the dark and finds his way to learn to appreciate the dark. And it's kind of a great way for kids that are afraid of the dark to get familiar with it. Yeah, and then the rest are quickly connected. Let's see, the number 5 is the owl of Athena, the goddess of wisdom. That was a huge part of Greek mythology. All right. So I want to start this part of the presentation by thanking a number of folks that donated their slides or their photos to this presentation. And one is Mark Grimison here, well known to many of us, active in all 3 organizations from time to time, or more than that. And this actually is a great gray owl, which you only see once in a blue moon in Massachusetts. It's a more northern species. It hardly ever comes down here. But to give you an idea of the popularity of owls, I'm going to read a little bit about a newspaper clipping from Rowley, Mass, where this owl was found. I think this is, Mark got this at Rowley. Oh, no, probably, no, this is later than that. So there was a great gray owl in Rowley, Mass at one point. And an owner, homeowner near where the owl was says this: there used to be 5 to 10 cars a day on the street, but now there's a traffic jam. If I want a traffic jam, I can move to Somerville and not see every geek who wants to watch a bird. The owner complained about old ladies who turn around in my driveway all day and said the birders are driving away the wildlife. So a couple of lessons in there, and we'll get to them. But yeah, the popularity of owls there's no question about it. So there are 2 families of owls, and most of the owls across the world are in the Strigidae family. They're known as like the common owls. And then the other part of the family is the Titanidae. And these are your barn owls. And there's some variations in barn owls, but look how widespread they are across the world. You can see that they're absent from the really cold places in the desert of northern Africa. But other than that, they have established themselves in quite a few places. Here's another photo by Mark. Yeah, so many of you probably already know what owls are famous for. And so hearing and a satellite dish-shaped face. I'm going to jump back to the last one real quick. You'll notice one of the differences between the barn owl and what we call the normal or regular owls is it's more of a heart-shaped face rather than a disc-shaped face. It has a longer beak and has a lot longer legs, and that'll come into play later on. But we also know that owls turn their head significantly, and we'll talk about that later. They have unique feathers. They have a dynamite digestive system. They can eat things whole and separate the nutrients and expel the waste out 2 ways, out 3 ways. They're really good at camouflage, and they have incredible talents, and we'll talk about that as well. So what we know about owls and their flight is that they're silent hunters. And as you can see from this barred owl photo, their wings are significantly larger in comparison to their body than most other birds. And so they can fly slowly, which is really important as they approach their prey at night. The wing beats, minimizing the wing beats minimizes the chance of making sound. You'll also notice that down in the left-hand corner here is a flight feather of a great horned owl. And if you look along the upper trailing edge, I'm sorry, the upper edge of the feather, you'll see that the feather has extensions, almost comb-like extensions on the top of the feather. And those are baffles. And so as an owl flies, those extensions baffle the noise. You'll also see on the trailing edge, the bottom part of the feather, although this is a little ragged and worn because it's an older feather, you can see that it is not as tightly wound as a lot of other feathers. It kind of pans off, and that also helps deaden the sound coming off the wing. And you'll see that even down to its talons, and this is a great horned owl talon in the middle picture below there, those are all feathers. It looks like fur, but they're all feathers. And we're going to look at this talon in detail a little later. And then the snowy owl on the right, you get a really good sense of just how fluffy a lot of the feathers are that aren't designed for the flight. So the primary and secondary and tertiary feathers on the wings are stiff, but soft edged, but you can see how much of the other feathers are more down-like, almost like a shag carpet, quieting the owl as it comes in. Here's a diagram that shows you exactly how much of the owl is feathers. And so you might be surprised that even some of our biggest owls, our great horned owl, our great gray owl, their maximum weight's like 4.5 pounds. So they're not particularly heavy, even though some of them can be quite large. Another striking photo from Mark. We also know that owls are predators and really good ones. And most predators have their eyes forward and have decent binocular vision. In other words, binocular vision allows them to anticipate space and understand distance. Whereas monocular vision, which a lot of prey has, like deer and mice, their eyes are on the side of their head, and that gives them the advantage to look for predators in a broader range, but it doesn't give them the ability to make sense of depth as much. The other thing we notice about owls' eyes is they're very large compared to a lot of other creatures in proportion to their body. In fact, owl eyes take up to about 3% of their entire body weight. To compare for us, it's about 3/1000th of our body weight. So much, much smaller. In fact, I've heard that in order to see as well as owls do, humans would have to develop eyes that were as big as grapefruit. So you can see that the owl's eye sockets are really big. And one of the reasons they don't smell well, or they don't have the ability to smell well, is that there's not a whole lot of room left for nasal cavities and the things required to have a good sense of smell. So the eyes come in, not a whole lot of room left over. And for many, many reasons, they can spot something move very easily. We also know they have excellent night vision. And so here's a comparison between the human eye and the owl eye. And most owls are nocturnal, not all of them. And owl eyes, so the difference is owl eyes are dominated by densely packed retinal rods. All animal eyes have photoreceptors shaped like cones and rods. And this might be going back to our high school science. Retinal cones function best in bright light and are responsible for color vision. And rods are much more sensitive and function much better for light, dim lights in particular. Owl species, the rods outnumber cones 30-1. So human eye has a lot of both. And in the owl, there's a lot less. You'll see also that one other thing that the owl has over us is if you look at the size of the cornea, it is much bigger. So it allows more light into the eye. And there's also, the owl has almost like a mirror in the back of the eye that'll accentuate the light. So here's some pretty interesting things about the owl's eyes. So they have 3 eyelids. The upper eyelid closes downward when the owl blinks. The lower eyelid, let me see if I get my pointer in here. The lower eyelid goes up and closes when the owl is sleeping. And then it's really hard to see here, but there's a clear eyelid that comes across the front of the eye like this, just before the owl strikes its prey, allowing it to have a pair of safety goggles, if you will. Because this picture's up here, you'll notice these bristly feathers, these specialized feathers. And they cover the beak to keep the beak warm. And we'll talk about, I think we're going to get to that really soon, but there's also bristly feathers here. All right, so we know that an owl can turn its head, and it's because their eyes do not have the muscles that ours do for peripheral vision. We can turn our eyeballs in our sockets left and right. They can't, they're fixed. And so an evolutionary adaptation over the years is they developed the ability to turn their head to compensate. And so they can turn their head 270 degrees. And yeah, so the eye is that big inside of that's a great horned owl skull. And so for that to happen, they need, it's just the neck, the vertebrae in the neck, they have 14 vertebrae in their neck. That's double what we have. And so that allows them to turn. Now you can imagine how vulnerable the blood vessels and the flow of blood could be up through this vertebrae. Like when we get whiplash, what can happen is the oxygen gets cut off, or it can get cut off, and you could even get clots. But they bundle their arteries in big tubes that are cushioned so that they can absorb any shock of twisting. All right, we know about killer hearing. And so here's on the left-hand side is a picture I took many years ago of what was an owl going after some sort of mammal. It was probably a vole. And some owls, great horns in particular, can hear their prey beyond a foot, under or beyond a foot of snow. So they do that by having these 4 important adaptations with their hearing. One is they have this kind of cone-shaped face, disc-shaped face that acts as like a satellite dish. So noise is funneled in towards their ears. And these appendages above here, these are not ears, these are the horns, and they're just extensions of feathers, and they're used for camouflage. We'll talk about that later. The ears are actually right in here on the great horn. And you'll see those are those bristly feathers there. And what they do is those bristly feathers funnel noises closer to the ear. And combined with the fact that their ears are asymmetrical, in other words, the ear canal on this side of the owl is higher than the other side of the owl. This is lower, and this gives them the ability to hear their prey from 2 different sources, which also helps them understand and compensate for depth. It's almost like triangulation, if you will. And then the last thing is that their ear canals themselves, or their ear drums, are a little different. This is exaggerated, but their eardrums are a little different in size, which also gives them that same ability to hear from 2 different perspectives. Here's a diagram showing just how, and this was a study done by Schifferman and Eelman back in 2004. And so they took a mouse on a string, and they tried dragging the mouse, I believe it was dead, in different directions to see how the owl would do comparatively as it approached the mouse. And so the first one was when it was running directly away from them. It worked well. They had about a 50% success rate. And I want to say that otherwise, if it was frozen or not, or still, the percentage is much higher than that. If it's coming towards them, and this is where the problem with having such great binocular vision is that they get a little short-sighted, a little nearsighted. So they lose their ability to see things as it gets closer as well as they do otherwise. And then they might as well give up if the mouse is running sideways. It's hard for them to compensate for that. So yeah, let's look at that Talon a little more. Again, this is a great horned owl Talon, and these are from specimens that we have that we're permitted to have for educational purposes. So these are parts of owls that were either roadkill or car strikes roadkill, or just found in the wild and were brought to us where we dissected, essentially. But the things to point out here is, first, we'll look at how sharp those talons are, and you'll get an appreciation for that in just a minute. These are kind of, the ends of these are kind of hidden in this really tough palm of these talons. And that's by design. It's like a pair of work gloves. It prevents the owl from puncturing its own palm, if you will. It also protects when a owl is striking prey. If there's let's say a skunk or something that could fight back, it protects them there. The other thing to watch out for is that this talon can swing back and join this talon so that this owl can have 2 talons forward and 2 talons back. Just like osprey, you're probably familiar with osprey, has that, and many other raptors. But it's to help them grasp their prey and also to perch. But yeah, just amazing. These are feathers, but it sure looks like fur. And this is the difference between, you'll see this later on, this is the difference between the great horned owl and its ability to live through some pretty tough winters, and the barn owl, which does not have this feature as defined. These are saw-whet talons, and now you get an appreciation for just how sharp they are. Great horned owls have a tremendous tensile strength in their talons. They can basically crush. How they often kill their prey is by crushing the windpipe of the prey. And I've heard that great horned owl talons are so strong that they could crush a tennis ball. So let's talk a little bit about digestion, because that's important. And we all know that every animal in some way has to get food from, they have to get the nutrients from the food they eat, and owls are no different. So they'll swallow their prey whole if they can. Otherwise, if it's too big, they'll tear it apart. And the first visit the food or prey makes is in the proventriculus, and it is basically enzymes are distributed into that cavity to start breaking it down. It then goes to the ventriculus, the gizzard, and it is the bones, fur, and if it was an insect they ate or crustacean, the shell or the exoskeleton would be removed. And then the nutrients would enter the upper and lower intestines, where they'll be absorbed. Then, after 6, 7, 8 hours of sitting and creating this pellet, the owl will then regurgitate it up in the form of a pellet, owl pellet. All right. We're going to talk a little bit now about owl territory and some of the ones that are really close to us. We are going to visit for our in-person program for those that sign up, that can sign up. We're going to visit Daniel Webster Wildlife Sanctuary for this. And it's one of the important bird areas, the IBA. So it's been categorized at that. And essentially it has, because it's 600 acres of open grassland, and we basically, for this bird here is the most important, bird-wise, the most important reason why Daniel Webster has been preserved, because it's one of the few places the bobolink will nest each year. We do have nesting meadowlarks, but this is really was the impetus to acquire the land. But it also provides wonderful habitat for visiting owls and some resident owls, because there's so many meadow voles that live there. So the grassland food chain, the way the works with the owl is pretty simple. So the owls are going to eat either the meadow vole, which is this creature right here, which far outnumbers any other rodent that we have in our area. And so it can go from the grass. The meadow vole eats it almost exclusively. They eat grass. The owl eats meadow vole. There is a second step in here with the meadow mouse. And so they're insects that eat grass and seeds, then get eaten by the mouse, and then the owl gets it that way. What's incredible about voles is they are capable of rapid, explosive reproduction. Female meadow vole is reproductively mature in 20 days of age. Litters are often range from 2 to 11 pups, and that takes less than a month. So females may mate almost immediately after giving birth. And so after weaning one litter, which takes about 20, 21 days, she may then have another litter. So it's possible for a female meadow vole to have 12 litters in a year in areas of mild climate. The ones at Daniel Webster aren't that prolific because of the winter, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're capable of a 6 or 7 litters a year. Just an amazing amount of food. And then we know owls have great camouflage. They're usually light on the wing, underside of the wing, and darker on the top. And now, being respectful of the time, we're gonna fly through our species. So here is one of the most prolific species around here, the eastern screech owl, and there's 2 phases. There's a gray phase and a red phase. And this is an owl that's pretty small, and it's a cavity nester, and we have them around in a lot of places. If you ever want to hear one of these, you got a really good chance if you drive behind Star Market in Marshfield Center, or a little after dusk, going behind the major stores, and to stop, shut your car off, roll your window down, and you might hear them. And they sound like a horse whinnying. They'll live pretty much anywhere, but they like to have kind of mixed wood forests, both deciduous and coniferous, and they don't mind being close to water. And this is what they're doing throughout the year. So they are establishing and holding territory throughout the year. So that's important to know. You don't want to scare them out of the territory. They use a lot of energy to establish and maintain their territory. Their courtship lasts, it's happening right now, right in the middle of it. Their nest building is a misnomer. Owls don't build nests. They steal nests from other birds, or they'll use cavities if they're a cavity nester. It takes a little over 3 months to raise young owlets of the screech, and they hold on to their plumage for quite some time. Snowy owl, this one was down at Duxbury Beach a few years ago. I managed to take a picture of. And sure enough, they prefer environments that look a lot like their home in the Arctic. And so they are used to having daylight all the time, or most of the time, for a lot of their season, their summer season anyway. So they have adapted to hunting anytime during the day. They still prefer to hunt at night because that's when their prey is most active, dusk and dawn. And they will take not just meadow voles and mice, but snowy owls will take things like birds, ducks, Norm saw one take a great blue heron one time, which is a pretty large bird. Here's a quick video of Norm releasing one. It's very loud. The wind is noisy, but you can probably hear what he has to say over the wind.
All right, this is a snow owl that we just captured at Logan Airport. It's one of 26 owls that we actually captured and relocated for the safety of the owl and the safety of the planes at the airport. We're down here at Duxbury Beach letting the birds go down here. And these birds are birds that come down each winter from the Arctic tundra. Some of these birds travel 3,000 miles just to get here. And it's amazing how long these birds live. We actually caught a snowy owl 2 years ago that we actually banded 23 years ago. So we know snowy owl is going to live to be at least 23 years old. This bird's a young male. You can tell that by the uniform feathers it has. It has no signs of molt on it. This is a bird that was probably born sometime in June in the Arctic. And as you can see, this guy is ready to go. So we're all set. The bird is banded. We got some data on our wing and measurements, tail measurements, and we're going to release this bird.
Pretty amazing. And I think he's released so far this year 26 birds from Logan Airport. This, again, thanks to Mark Grimison, this is a spectacular photo of a short-eared owl. They are our winter visitor. They do nest in Massachusetts, but only on a few isolated islands in the Elizabethan Islands down on the southeast shore. They are usually, well, they always nest on the ground, which is different than a lot of other owls. And they sound like this. But this photo is again shows the let's get the pointer all along here. Look at how soft the trailing edge of these flight feathers are, muffling that noise. And the same thing with its tail feathers. And you'll see, especially snowies and great horns, and to some degree short ears, those feathers on the legs certainly help with the noise. So here is Daniel Webster here, and they frequent almost every winter. There'll be a few here. I had 5 there at one point this winter. This photo is by Patty Steinman, and we're going to go to the barred owl now, and you can see how well they can camouflage. A barred owl is one of the owls that's actually doing really well and expanding its population. It's becoming a much more seen bird, and if you're going to see an owl during the day, one of your best chances is a barred owl. They often sit out on branches. You need to be respectful of the distance you're from them, but they, for the most part, aren't as disturbed as other owls with human presence. And as opposed to a great horned owl, which would be sitting usually in a pine tree up against the trunk. This is what a barred owl sounds like. Some people think that sounds like "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" And it is similar to a great horned owl, but you can hear the difference there. And good chances is that some of you have heard this owl. This is a fledgling. You can see its final feathers, its final growth of the feathers isn't finished yet. But you get a sense of They get to be as big as their parents, sometimes a little bigger because of the feathers are so new. Barred owls appreciate mostly deciduous forests, but can be found near water as well. They are known to eat, they can fish, and they are known to eat crayfish. And here's where you might see them and why they'd be doing what they're doing. So again, they establish territory and hold it. Their courtship is just right now, in these next couple of months. Again, the nest building, there's a little line there for most owls because they actually, even though they steal others' nests or use other nests, they sometimes line them with softer materials before they lay their eggs. You can see that it takes a little longer for a barred owl to become adult. And yeah, the other two categories we'll discuss with the great horned owl. Here's the barn owl. This is that owl that is so widespread across the world, and it sounds like this. Which might be one of the reasons why people were a little afraid of owls at one point. They are an owl that we do have in Massachusetts. There isn't many of them. They don't do well with really cold winters or a lot of snow cover. And so where we do see them regularly is on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. And in fact, this photo is from Martha's Vineyard, and our sanctuary down there has a pair of nesting barn owls in their building, and they have a cam that goes 24 hours. So if you want to see some, it's a black and white film, but if you want to see barn owls in their nest, then go to our website and go, you can just type in barn owl cam and it'll bring you to it. You could see just how much thinner and this bird is and how much how less feathers cover its talons. And so these birds don't do well in catching prey in snow. And so they can perish pretty quickly. If they don't get fed 3 or 4 days in a row, then there's a good chance that they're going to die. And that really heavy winter we had 5-6 years ago with all that snow cover wiped out significant amounts of barn owls out on the vineyard in Nantucket. Here you can see in 63 days, they become an adult. And yeah, they will nest in cavities and on cliffs and shelves and that kind of thing, but they will certainly nest in, the last that I knew around here used to nest in the silo that was on Dwyer Farm, which is now Daniel Webster Wildlife Sanctuary. And then down in the right-hand corner is a still from kind of a famous online video of young barn owls in a construction site in Egypt, I think it was, that made the rounds last year. And yeah, they are a funny looking animal when they're this young. You know, a lot of leg, not many feathers, very alien-like. All right, saw-whet owls. They are our smallest bird, smallest owl around here, and they sound like this. And that, people call them the saw-whet owl because they thought that it sounded like sharpening a saw, like a two-person cross-cut. They like this, coniferous forests if they're lucky. And here's our great horn. They have the most diverse diet of our North American raptors, and their prey range size from tiny rodents to skunks and other raptors. They've been responsible for taking a few of our osprey chicks off of the osprey platform at our North River office every other year or so. Yeah. Kind of the classic owl sound that so many of us are familiar with. Again, their range is pretty incredible, at least in the New World. You can see, except for a lot of the Amazon River Basin and some of the plains in North and South America, and then the true Arctic, they're absent from, but otherwise they're all over the place. And I've seen them in my travels in Baja California. It's just so weird to see them in so many different places. They're so adapted. And so here's an owl that will kind of give up its territory for a while, and so it'll reestablish itself. The female often will stick around in that territory they've established the whole year, but not always. But to increase the chances of food distribution, the males often will leave the area for a few months in the summer, late and early fall, and then come back. Their courtship lasts a little longer, and it takes a while to raise an owlet. And there's the seasonal movement that we described, male moving away for a while and coming back. All right, we're gonna finish our owls and then go on to just a few other things before we wrap it up. But here's the long-eared owl. And this is an owl that comes through occasionally in the winter. It's a wintertime visitor. And if there's one, there's often a few. And so they sound like this. They're kind of an owl that sits and waits and then pounces. So their preferred habitat is on the edges of open ground, grassland. These are blueberry barrens. So they'll sit in the trees and just wait for something to come by and grab it. All right, we're gonna finish. This is one of our educators at Mass Audubon, Lucy Gertz, and she put in a few slides about etiquette, basically. So when we're out looking for owls, obviously we want to be sensitive to them, especially, you hear the stories of people photographing and looking and viewing snowy owls at Duxbury Beach. And this year it's been really an issue up at Salisbury Beach because there's been some long-eared owls sighted there, and they're a rarity. So a lot of folks, there's so many people that have gotten into photography, and the word is out. Most photographers are really, and most birders are really tuned into ethical bird watching, and they do a pretty good job at policing themselves, but it can get overwhelming. It's usually the folks with like an iPhone or a small camera that think they need to get a full frame shot, and so they get up too close. But essentially, if you're in owl territory and you see an owl, and if it starts to move its head left or right, what that's saying is it's looking for ways to escape routes, basically. And so that's an indication that you are basically stressing the owl. So you should back up. One of the ways I look at seeing rare birds, including owls, is I ask myself, is this bird any better off with me seeing it? And the answer is usually no. So I will gladly go someplace and look for an owl and wait until the owl moves closer to me. I will never try to approach or decrease the amount of space between me and the owl. It takes more patience, but in the long run, it helps because you're going to get good photos if you're patient and sit still and let the owl do the distance. So these are pretty straightforward. And then this is especially true, and there's a whole bunch of us out there. I mean, there's no question that owls understand our presence and will see us well before we see them. So just be aware of that. I really try to get away from using recorded devices or mimicking owl calls, especially this time of year where a lot of them are courting or nesting. And so they're either thinking you are competition. So it doesn't help to stress them out. All right, so we'll finish with this week's Winter Nature Challenge. If you could send your entries to me at that email address. And so this is a pretty broad list. Want to make sure there's something for everybody. So listen for owls, identify them if you can. And if you have some sort of recording device, if you have an iPhone or your phone and it does record, then record the sound. You'll be surprised at the quality of sometimes, especially on a still winter night, the sound can carry quite a ways. I've heard owls that are probably a mile away if you're in an open field and hearing them on a quiet winter's night. Sketch an owl from a reference. Do whatever you need to do to be comfortable sketching. You can trace a photo or use a photo for reference or use your imagination. And we talked a lot about different adaptations owls have had over the years. Be creative and think of one that an owl might respond as they respond to climate change, what they might need, and an adaptation that you think that would help. Look for owl signs like pellets or whitewash. And whitewash is basically owl poop. Sketch or photograph them. Pellets are really fun to dissect if you're careful. There's so many places you can send away for owl pellets that come, and they have been cleaned, and there's no bacteria in them, sanitized basically, and you can dissect them using tweezers and even just using tweezers, and you can pull them apart, find the bones, and reconstruct the skeleton of meadow voles or mice. It's pretty cool. Or if you find one in the wild, you can wear gloves and a mask and dissect and just make sure that the surface you're using is cleaned afterwards. And then another one, invite a friend or family member to dress warm, go outside with you, and sit quietly and listen to night noises. Write down what you heard in a few sentences, or a poem or haiku, and send that along to us. But I want to send it back to Brian and Chris, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we hope you get out a number of times this winter. All it takes is just poking your head out the door once in a while, and you're bound to hear an owl in your neighborhood. So I'm going to give up sharing. And back to Brian.
Hey, Doug, that was just fantastic. There are several questions here. Do owls make their calls only to find a mate, or do they call in other mating situations?
That's a great question. So, they will use calls to notify other owls that they're approaching their territory, so they can be defensive. They have calls for feeding their young, and some of the mating calls can be quite involved, leading up to a series of calls back and forth. Generally speaking, male owls have a deeper call, females a little higher pitched, but as they get closer, and before they actually mate, you'll sometimes hear them clicking their bills together, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Also, is there, and I'm assuming this is probably species specific, but is there a difference in coloring between male and female owls?
It's very subtle. Sometimes it's like in the snowy owl that Norm was pointing out. It's more it's almost impossible to tell in the wild. You'd have to count the third and fourth primary feather, and you'd count the bars and spots on the third and fourth primary flight feather to determine, to strictly define the differences between the sexes there. Females are generally a little larger than males, which isn't that uncommon with birds, because females do most of the work. They for the most part are the ones that sit on and incubate eggs. Not always, but mostly. And that's also actually an advantage because the differences in the genders allows the two genders to specify, or it gives them more options as far as what prey they can go after. It gives them more variety of prey because of the ability to catch prey differs by the size you are.
Okay, and in terms of those really interesting charts, those monthly behavioral charts that you put together for a species, there was a question about what does it mean for an owl to hold on to their plumage?
Oh, basically, so owls generally only molt once a year, and sometimes not even that. A lot of other species will molt, especially the big migrators will wear out wings quicker. And so basically the plumage is referring to the year's molt. And so like all birds, eventually feathers wear out and they'll have to replace them. And so it's a process. Sometimes it prevents some species of birds from flying. So they have to kind of find shelter and just be less give themselves less options to be prey themselves.
Awesome, thanks, Doug. I think that answers all the questions that we had that came in. Absolutely just a wonderful presentation, very informative.
Well, yeah, again, thanks for joining us, everybody. This has been a fun, we appreciate people's willingness to kind of pivot our traditional Water Watch series to this. kudos to you, Brian and Chris, for recognizing that this was an opportunity to switch gears a little bit and give people some skills so they get out and do some things that they crave the most, get outside and away, away from being inside all the time. So good on you.
With that being said, Doug and one of Mass Audubon's volunteers, Steve French, will be leading an owl prowl this Sunday from 4 to 6. And again, Brian will be sending out a registration link right after this, and it's first come, first serve. It is very limited. So be sure to jump on that chance, which should be very exciting. Anything else you want to say about that, Doug?
No. So here's there's a chance that it'll be limited in number of people, but don't be afraid to go owling out on your own. And I'll just take a few moments to talk about places that I've had good luck around, if that's okay. Again, behind Star Market in Marshfield Center, you got to be careful. Sometimes, like I'll even call the police their office number, not their emergency number. And if I'm going to be in, like for a Christmas count or something like that, if I'm in behind the Council on Aging in Marshfield after dark, I just give people the heads up. But places like if you don't mind going down to Plymouth, Miles Standish is a great place. And again, you can just be driving along one of those roads and stop, roll down your window. That's kind of the best way to find owls. In behind, again, sorry, these are all Marshfield specific, more or less, but in behind CVS in Marshfield on the bridle trail, anywhere along the bridle trail for that matter, if you're familiar with it, you got a good chance of screech and great horn. I've had good luck with barred owls in Duxbury at Wright Reservoir, which is off of Temple Street. It's kind of a little known gem from Duxbury Conservation. And also the Hoyt Hall Preserve. I've had both in the daytime, both barred and great horned owl there. But anywhere where there's, you can anticipate where there's good hunting. Again, it's often in the edges of things. So if you can find a stand of relatively undisturbed forest next to open field, that's probably your best bet.
Excellent. All right. And then, so I think that wraps it up for this week. And next week, oh, and don't forget to send your challenges into Doug. It'll be great to see some of those responses that you get, Doug.
Yeah.
And I will be sending you a picture of a great horned owl pellet.
Oh.
With a really interesting something in it. So, all right. Next week, I'm actually going to be presenting on the City Nature Challenge, which is an amazing program that is worldwide. It just started less than, I think 6 or 7 years ago, and it has grown internationally. And so the City Nature Challenge for the Boston area keeps on expanding its range. And so now it includes east of the 495 fault all the way out to Stellwagen Bank, down onto the Cape and out into the islands. And so it's a great opportunity for citizen scientists to get out and help support the biodiversity data collection in our area. And so it can be done with anyone, from anyone. All you need is a computer or a phone, a camera. It's pretty easy to participate. And so I'm going to tell you about how you can get involved and your family can get involved. And we will talk about that next week. So with that, anything else, Brian and Doug?
Nope, I'm all set. Thanks to everyone once again for participating. And thanks a lot, Doug. I really appreciate it.
That was a great presentation. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll sign off and we will see you soon.